Hello, Connecticut, and welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. The title basically says it all. I'm Nancy Barrow, and I will be delving into this new state program and how it can help you and your family. This podcast will give you information you should know about Connecticut paid leave and maybe just a little bit more. Connecticut paid leave brings peace of mind to your home, family, and workplace. Welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. Father's Day is Sunday, June 16th in 2024. And today we will be celebrating fathers, and focus on this podcast is fathers taking paid leave to be at home to bond with their babies. Paternity leave is an important opportunity for fathers to take time off to work actively and participate in the care of the new baby. And studies have shown that taking paternity leave helps fathers mentally. They start to feel less stressed out, less anxious and depressed. And the reason this happens is because of a hormone called oxytocin. And when it's released, it promotes bonding and reduces stress levels. 43% of fathers take bonding leave through Connecticut paid leave. And we're so happy that we can enable fathers to take time away from work with income replacement to bond with the addition to their families. Joining the Paid Leave Podcast today is David Sergi, who first reached out to me on LinkedIn to say that he had listened to one of the podcasts and he had a unique story about Connecticut paid leave and bonding, and he wanted to share. So that has led David to be actually the poster child for fathers taking bonding leave with Connecticut paid leave. He has done testimonials for us. It's led to a wonderful relationship, and he can be seen on our website and our YouTube page. But the website is ctpaidleave.org. So welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast, David.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be able to tell my story. And that's why I originally reached out.
Yeah.
When I took the leave, I said, why aren't more men doing this?
Yeah.
And I felt getting that message out there of how rewarding it can be, it really changed my family dynamic for the better. And I really started to ask around, and I noticed all my peers didn't take the leave with their kids. And I said, why is that? And it was the same thing that we're talking about, a fear of job, what's going to happen there. Can I bond with my kid? What will happen? And none of those fears were true. And I said, in order to change our culture, somebody has to speak up a little bit. And why not me?
Why not you? Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Also joining us is Charles Johnson. I will call him Charlie. He came to us through one of our board members, Justin Zartman, who said his friend got to use Connecticut paid leave for one of his children and that he would be great on a podcast. So welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Justin, for the recommendation. I'm happy to be here and talk and have this conversation, echoing a similar things that David just said, being able to use the leave for one child, but not two. I know we'll probably talk more about that, but it was a totally different experience. And like David, I hope everybody takes advantage of this opportunity. It was really great for me. Yeah,
and we were really surprised. 43% of dads are taking the time off. And I think this generation is a little different, and I think it's so rewarding for us to know that dads are really taking the time off. It really helps the moms. It helps the babies. It helps everybody.
You're exactly right. And I think, we sitting here have a unique experience because we both took it with our second kid. And I lived in Florida when I had my first child, and I didn't get leave. My son was born, and I had to take PTO, and I went back to work. I didn't have that experience. So when my wife and I were planning to have a second kid and where should we settle down, we really did look for a state that was more family friendly. And when we landed here in Connecticut, we learned about CT paid leave, and I said, I don't want to miss that opportunity. And it really led us into having the discussion of, can we have a second kid? And it said yes. And then when I said I had that ability to actually bond and not have to go back to work right away, it changed everything. But I think ultimately, my experience was a little bit different. I was a caretaker for a very long time for my father who passed away. And truthfully, I didn't get any benefits. I worked right through all of that. I really struggled. And you learn about how something like CT paid leave, yes, is for fathers and families, but it's also for caretakers. And there's many different applications of what this program does. I think that's why I was also very passionate about speaking up. So I think back my own past experiences and I say, wow, I could have really used it in other parts of my life. as a caretaker who experienced burnout and things like that, I relate to many of the stories you do on this podcast, not just this. And I do think that is what this program is about. Yes, we're talking about fathers and that we should be celebrating and encouraging them. But, later in life, you might need this program in some other different way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's also the message I want to preach to other men out there is, yes, you should use it for this. And also in the future, you might need it again, or somebody else in your life might need a program like this.
Right. Even if you're a parent and something goes wrong with your child, you can take caregiver leave to take care of your child if it's a serious health condition. So there's so many caveats to paid leave that are so important in every stage of your life. Charlie, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you became a dad and how you came to use this program?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I won't give you the whole background of me and my wife, but my wife Alyssa and I, we both have lived in Connecticut our whole lives, and we went to the University of Connecticut and then settled back into our hometown of Meriden. And we always knew we wanted to have a family, and so nothing was really going to stop us once we were ready. And so we had our first child, and it was terrific. I was a state employee at the time, and I used a couple weeks of PTO and went back to work, and that's just how it was. So, even in a state like Connecticut, that's great for families, it always has been. I didn't even think that this should be a thing or should exist, right? It was just not in existence at all or on my mind.
But FMLA, so you could get your job back, right?
And that's what my wife ended up using, for her. So,
sure.
So we went that route. It was very difficult, but it was also the first child. So everything's, a learning curve. We always knew we wanted more than one child. So when we felt ready, we wanted to have a second one. And by that point, this was a thing. This program was in existence. And I just was like, oh, yeah, of course. Of course it should happen. Of course, everybody should do it who can take advantage of the program. My work was going to be fine. Like, my work is pretty normal. It's not, I'm not doing anything hypercritical of like needing to be there hands-on, 24/7. So I was so happy to take the opportunity. And the difference in raising the second child while on leave was just so stark, the difference. You're still trying to shuffle around a preschooler. She has a busier social schedule than I do.
Their calendar is full.
Yes. And so you're doing that, going to preschool and trying to come back. And then on top of the fact that, my wife had a C-section, and it's like, of course I should be there for her for at least the 6 weeks that the doctor said she shouldn't be, lifting the heavy things and moving too much. So while she recovers, it was so clear. But just to have been here the whole time and think, I didn't even think that this should be available to me, or I didn't know that it should be available to me, to it being available to me. It's like night and day, and I think everybody should take advantage of it. So
how much time did you take, Charlie?
So I ended up taking 2 months. I took 8 weeks. My employer was generous enough to make my salary full.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If I did the CT paid leave for 8 weeks.
Right. And,
taking any sort of, decrease can be hard on anybody.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to do that, I know that I was still eligible, I think, for another 4, but at that point we were kind of in a good swing of things. So that's how long it took.
And it's interesting too, like that last 4 weeks you could have spread out. So if you needed to take a week,
right,
here and there to bond with your child, you can do that for the first year, which is really nice.
And the other thing is, when you're preparing for a child, you're like, for that moment,
yeah,
right? And so, no, I should have taken the other 4 weeks spread out, or found some time.
Which is wonderful, because you can take it,
yeah,
like we say, intermittently or reduce schedule from work. Just so you have that in your back pocket and in your brain. I don't know if you're going to have another child, but
right.
In case,
good to know.
just to know those things. And what about you, David? How much time did you take with your second child?
So, I took the full allotted time, because I really understood how precious this time was with the second kid. It's the old saying with parenting, the days are long, the years are short. So you realize that you have challenges, but the time just goes by right away. And what CT paid leave doesn't actually prepare you for is the day that it ends, the day you have to go back to work and your kid's in daycare. If you want an emotional day, you think the caring for your kid is hard, wait until that first few days that you're no longer bonding with them. What CT paid leave does is it keeps your kid on you literally 24/7 because you pick up other responsibilities around the house. I'm sure you experience this as well, where when the kid's napping, you're suddenly the cleaner and you're doing laundry and you're doing the whole thing and really picking up for everybody in the house because you have all these new responsibilities. And then you go back to work and you're like, wait a second, this kid should be in my arms.
Did you feel depressed going back to work?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
And I think you're not doing it right if you're not, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But because that is how strong that bond is during that time when you don't have the distractions of going to work or financial, you're focused on being the best dad you can be during that time. And then when it ends and you have to hand over that responsibility to the daycare, which we had to, you're a little bit
stressed out.
Yes, absolutely.
I think
and you shouldn't be because you suddenly have help, but you are more stressed out because you want to still be the caretaker forever.
Yeah.
And you are, but in a different capacity, right?
Well, I would say when my leave ended, my wife was still on leave, and so he didn't go directly to daycare. But I think I was mentally preparing for it in a way that I wasn't able to the first time, and so I was just thinking logically and strategically, when you have to go straight back to work, and you're not sleeping, and the baby's feeding every 2 to 3 hours, and is up on that schedule, if not more often, it's like, how am I supposed to do it? So just because I was able to stay home with CT, paid leave for a couple of months, he got into a better schedule, which allowed me to function as a human being in the outside of my house world.
Yeah.
And so I was, that was the biggest thing for me. It was still challenging to leave the family, but to have those extra 8 weeks is or 12 if you use all of them. It gets you ahead to the point where you can maybe function.
How did people react when, you said you were going to be staying home with your child? Did you get different reactions from different people about staying home? Because there's a stigma to it.
There is. Still is. There is. It's coming down. And you had it. I don't know. The generational thing is definitely a fact. I don't want to paint with a broad brush.
Yep.
Everybody thinks differently in all age groups. But I will say, whenever I told an older person, they didn't understand it. And then when I told a contemporary or a friend or a colleague, they were like, that's great. So for me, that, and not everybody, some people said that's great, pretty much across the board, but it's still, people were surprised that I was staying home.
Same reaction over here. And once again, it was like a motivator of what, you don't think I could do this for 12 weeks?
Yeah.
You don't think I could be the best dad without my wife and that? I almost saw it as a challenge. I'm like, no, I want to do 16 weeks. I want to do forever. When people challenge you, I'm like, of course I could change diapers and feed. I could figure this out, not just from other men in my life, but other, females and family members. Yes. Of David, you're going to stay. And I'm like, I am a grown adult with my second kid.
Women's work is really honestly what people traditionally think. The mom stays home, the dad has to work, they have to bring home money. But now with paid leave, it really alleviates that problem.
And I think, supporting my wife, believe it or not, her career has always been better than mine. And it was important for me to support her in that way. She does a lot of good work and she's super passionate about what she does and she wanted to re-enter the workforce. And that's the underlying thing that I'm so passionate about with CT paid leave is she's worked so hard for that, but also she wanted a family and I wanted to support her. And it was important for us to allow her to go back to work, something that she loves doing. This is being a mother is part of her identity, right? Just like being a father is a part of our identity. But also we're lucky enough to enjoy what we do for a living and want to support our teams and our colleagues, and we're passionate about our professional life. And that's what this program does. It allows us to have more of an identity than just be a parent. You can step away, but then also you can support your spouse to go back into the workforce.
Research is showing that beyond improved relationships, moms are more likely to return to full-time work when dads have access to parental leave, and the financial impact is pretty significant. For every month a dad takes paternity leave, a mom's income goes up about 7%. And by giving 3 months of paid parental leave to dads and having them take it so mom can get back to work, you can basically get rid of the non-parent wage gap. And so it's really interesting financially how that can help, like you were saying, like getting your wife back to work.
You're exactly right. And it's more about, you could say, there's underlying, yes, money, but it's also about being integrated to your teams again, that you're back at work and supporting, I think, your colleagues. And that, yes, it can lead to the financial, probably why that happens. But I think wasn't her motivator. Or, hey, But it's like, how do I go back and support that team and the mission of that our organizations are trying to achieve? I think that, yes, if that leads to financial, that's great.
Yeah. But
it was ultimately, hey, I still care about that. I care about my kids and my family, and that's how this whole thing is tied together. And that's why when employers embrace these programs, I think that's the other difference between Connecticut and Florida, where I came from. It is the employer saying, take this leave. I never felt any pressure not to do it.
I would say, I can't speak to everybody's experience, but I would imagine I can understand those statistics and seeing how, it would help people get back to work where they otherwise might not be able to. I can talk about our specific experience in that my wife was always going to go back to work. She's worked very hard for her career as well. But, not every program necessarily needs to be about some wide sweeping benefit. Sometimes it can just be about making things a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. Like, we were going to do this. We were planning on doing this, but thank you for making it a little bit easier. And like, that's what people who are like, oh, I can handle it. But sometimes it can be a little easier.
Research also shows that when infants experience strong attachments from the get-go, they are better poised to mature to a happy, independent, and resilient grown-up. And it's really interesting. They say that a paternity leave can lead to stronger attachments that last. In 2019, a report said that even 9 years later, children whose dads took at least 2 weeks of paternity leave reported feeling closer to their dads than the children who didn't have their dad take any leave. Have you noticed anything different about your second child's level of attachment to you, or happiness, or independence?
Yeah.
Okay.
A huge,
Too much.
Yeah. I took the 2 weeks, which was the guideline. And I have a terrific relationship with my first child, and it's great. She's 5. My second child seems to be all over me, way more than the first. And it actually, sometimes I get, a little sad that I didn't have that in the first 18 months. Right. And maybe he'll change, but according to the statistics, maybe he won't. But, in those first 18 months, it's been so close that I wish I could go back in time and have that with the first child.
Right. And it's hard to say that because it wasn't available to you.
Right. No, you're right. Of course.
Yeah,
but we concoct these, imaginary scenarios in our minds. It's like, oh, that would have been nice.
It would have been nice, right? And it would be nice if there's a national program, so you wouldn't have to have worried about that at all.
Right.
But we're working on that.
I'll tell you a funny story. It made my wife way more comfortable with, leaving the kids with me. She was... After the first kid out, I never saw her leave the house. But after I took the leave, I'm going to yoga class. I'm going out with the girls, book club night. I can stay late at work because she goes, well, you just did it for 12 weeks. And I think her level of, you proven you know what you're doing, right? Which has actually almost immediately helped her have more of a social life, or being like, yeah, I could leave you home with the kids and go grocery shopping or go to the mall or go get those errands done. I don't got it because right? And I think that's another underlying benefit of this program, hopefully with, men taking it, is it's not just the wife or the mother going back to work. It's also being comfortable for their own leisure after and being able to go, yes, I could take a mental health break because you now have the experience with that child. Your bond is stronger, so they don't have to be on top of their kids as much. And it changed that relationship as well.
Yeah, interesting. I was going to ask you about how did the relationship change between you and your partner? Like, did it improve it because you took this leave and you really helped her exponentially? I mean, honestly, it really shows that it decreases any kind of postpartum depression in women.
You're exactly right. And that's the energy shift I felt in our house. It was just the level of comfort of like, if she was running 20 minutes late, there was no text message.
This.
Correct. There was not even a text. It was okay. And I promise you that was not the case after the first kid because maybe I was also a new father, but I never had that time. I mean, I was back to work, I think, the same week. It was scary.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a lot more comfort. Baby two. But just like to everyone's who might be listening, like, it was her first child too. Like she didn't know what she was doing. And I think the assumed stresses that she has to take on as like, I'm in charge, I'm new to this. Like that seems a little bit ridiculous that we don't like expect the same of the father. And I was guilty of it too. I remember her first trip to Target when we had one kid and I was like, okay, try not to call her. And it's like she needed like an hour.
She just to herself.
But I could have gone to Target whatever. I could have gone, So it's always that assumption that it's got to be her. You said before, I'm a grown man with kids. I can handle it. And so, yes, this paid leave gets you in the action right away all the time and makes you more prepared for it. But like, honestly, that's how it should be. Like, we should all be prepared to take care of our children.
It takes both parents to really raise a really healthy, wonderful family. And I think that's one of the things that you're both telling me that paid leave allowed you guys to do.
Yeah. And you hope to change generations. I hope, I very much did this for what I hope the memories of my daughter and my kids will be a long time from now of they could tell the story. My dad stayed home with me. He stepped away from his career. It actually does change generations and the stories they will tell 20 and 30 years from now. It's a bit of a big picture, but I think that's why this program is established. It's not for you and I. It's actually to change our kids' lives and the stories they're going to tell. And hopefully other programs will come of this based on their experiences and those stories that we share about programs and, the government that do help people. That is why parents should do this. You have to set a good example. And a good example of parenting is saying, yes, I will step away. I will give you the dedicated time that I'm allowed to take.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm willing to do it. And then things will hopefully change for the better for, kind of on a larger scale of society.
I did a podcast with a really incredible researcher. Her name is Maya Rawson-Slater, and she is the associate professor of health policy at Stanford University. And one of her findings was if you have a male coworker who takes paternity leave, you're more likely to take paternity leave yourself. So I think that's another way that things are changing, because I think this younger generation, you're talking to your coworkers and you're saying, I just got to take, 3 months off to bond with my kid.
Yeah, it is the domino effect of people. You can influence others. It does shine a light on this program when one person does it in an office. I totally believe that because the office environment I was in, I stepped away. And do you know how many people came over to me privately and said, wait a minute, you could do that? And, it's still a little bit unknown, this program. That's why this public awareness campaigns are so great. And there's a lot of good that government does. You can ask for assistance. It's okay. Then when you ask for assistance, somebody else will ask for assistance and they're better off.
I did talk with some female coworkers of mine about the process and about how I said my employer will, compensate or add to the leave. And so that process, I helped other people who weren't fathers that were going to be mothers to figure out how to navigate that.
Oh, that's great. So they ended up, getting paid leave to supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
But I am, in my friend group, we were some of the first ones to have children. And that has definitely, if you can, just do it.
Yeah.
But again, it's like a little bit of a generational thing. But if everybody it's a domino effect, starts to do it, even in your small circles, they have small circles.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if it does get over 50%. I mean, 43%, we'll take it. I think that's really amazing that fathers are using bonding leave.
That is amazing, but I was 100% going to take it, so it's hard to believe.
That there's only 43?
It still feels low, but it's great, the 43%.
Yeah. So, David, I know that you have a fathers group that you belong to. So tell me a little bit about what you talk about. Did you talk to them about your paid leave?
Yeah. So, my story, once again, was interesting because I was a transplant to Connecticut. I moved here professionally and to start a family. This is where I really wanted to settle down. So I really moved here with no friends. And I got one of the luckiest breaks. I was walking down Main Street in Wethersfield and I saw a sign, join the Wethersfield's Dad's Club. And I said, a dad's club? I could do that. I could be, And really what that did was it's a built-in community where you just have a group of dads that help coordinate play dates. Sometimes it's a book club. Sometimes it's a dads-only event where we would go golfing or we meet up. And we just do different activities and we have just community organizers of dads who try to keep dads busy and out of the house, which also maybe helps you get some break from your kids or maybe just things that don't cost money, right? We try to do a lot of free events where you don't have to go to spend money at, the trampoline park every weekend. We spend, a lot of money there. So, and we just do different activities. But I think what I try to preach with the Dad's Club is best parenting. What are those best practices? CT paid leave is one of the things that we often talk about is, how do we encourage other dads to do it? Or some dads are a little bit older in a group and maybe they're caretakers for their parents or they're thinking about that and they have other applications. Maybe they're caring for somebody else sick in their life. And it's just more about having the conversation. But for somebody, and I think, Connecticut is seeing a rise of people move here from out of state. That's why I do think a lot of these super local organizations that support parenting and fathers and connect community are vitally important because at one point I was a transplant to another state when I moved to Florida. Same thing. I joined a lot of community groups. I started organizing, just volunteering, and you make friends.
Yeah.
And with that, you have community. And that's what that Wethersfield Dad's Club did for me here was it gives you friends and it gets you out of the house, gets you socializing, talking, having fun.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you bring your life experience of what Connecticut Paid Leave did. And did you recommend it to other fathers?
I'm constantly recommending it because, I'm also at the right age where my peers are doing this. And I think it's a little bit of what we say is the past generation didn't have this. They wish they had it. So we really have to be the ones that are, the 43% who actually used it. We have to be the loudest and trying to get that number higher. And how do we do that is by sharing our story with other dads because the number should be higher.
Any final thoughts about Connecticut Paid Leave and bonding with your children and Father's Day?
There's a lot of things that, government does for you that you don't see. And sometimes it can be difficult to really internalize how anything benefits you, even though it's all around you. It's just harder to see. So this program just so specifically cut and dry benefits me. And so it was just nice to have that as an additional program that I can feel good and appreciate, that I knew life before it and I know life with it and it's better with it. So,
yeah, the difference between the two kids is really apparent.
Yeah, and I think for me, I go, wow, I've benefited so much from this. And then you hear the stories, like we said, of the generation before us did not have this. And they go, wow, David, I wish I had that. So it does get you to think, what program should we be advocating for right now that doesn't exist, that my kids would benefit from? So this is wonderful, been such a great experience, but it should keep you motivated to go, what else might be missing out there. And you should look at programs like CT paid leave and go, what else needs to be modeled around this in our state that might be missing that could make the next generation better, that we could work towards? Just like this program did not come out of nowhere. I would imagine there were endless years of advocates.
I think it was started in 2012 and didn't pass till 2019.
See that? And all those people are the heroes of this program that I've benefited from. And we all did as men and community members. So you have to go, who else needs a champion in this state? Who else should we be a voice for that it might take 5 years for that legislation or that funding to come? So it does get you thinking when you're sitting at home for 12 weeks holding your baby and they're napping on you. These are the thoughts you're having, which is also the underlying why people should do this. Is, yeah, the baby's napping and laundry will be done and everything will be all right. And you actually have a moment to go, wow, what do I want to do in the future, right? Who do I want to be? What should I advocate for, right? That is I think the underlying mission and success of this program. It allows you to have those type of thoughts.
Yeah, and it'll be exciting to see what happens. There's lots of other programs that are out there, so it's really wonderful. I want to thank my guests who are remarkable dads. David Sergi, thank you so much. Charlie Johnson, thank you so much. I hope you play this podcast for your kids when they're older so they know how much they meant to you.
Playing on Father's Day for them.
Right. Thank you so much for being on the Paid Leave podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
And happy Father's Day to both of you.
Appreciate it.
For more information or to apply for benefits, please go to ctpaidleave.org. This has been another edition of the Paid Leave podcast. Please like and subscribe so you'll be notified about new podcasts that become available. Connecticut Paid Leave is a public act with a personal purpose. I'm Nancy Barrow, and thanks for listening.